What you see before you is a pile of sewing notions. Notions are just all of the little accessories or things that you might need when sewing that would make your life easier. You don't always need all of these things, but you always need to have them handy in order to use them for various projects. Kind of a funny story is for years I have had students find these laying around my classroom. And if they've had me for parenting or some other class, they might come up and say, "Mrs. McNew, I found a nail at my spot." And it always makes me kind of laugh because I'm like, yeah, I guess it does kind of look like a nail, but what it is actually, it's a pin. This is a sewing pin. And we use it to hold the fabric together, hold it in place before it's sewn. So this is an example of a pin. I actually don't love this type of pin. I prefer this type of pin. So we have the pin that has a little ball on the end, okay? But both of them are pins and both are used for sewing. Next, I'm going to show you a pin cushion. This is probably the most typical pin cushion that you see, but people can do homemade pin cushions, or you can do a wrist pin cushion, or this is a magnetized pin cushion. So there's a big magnet on the bottom and everything just sits in that tray. Either way, these are used to hold your pins. So the pins push down into them. Real quick, while I have this here, I'm going to show you a hand sewing needle. A hand sewing needle is obviously different from a pin because it is a needle, not a pin. But students in my class will call them the same thing, so I want to train you on the difference. If you look at this really closely, it has a hole at one end. That is called the eye, and that is where the thread will go when you're hand sewing. When you have a hand sewing needle, you don't want it to get lost inside of your pin cushion. So because my pin has a little circular head on it, I can just push it straight down into the pin cushion and it won't get lost. But if I did that with my needle, whoop, it could go all the way down in there and I'd never find it again. So what we do when we're storing a needle is I'm going to push into the pin cushion and push out, and I will lay it flat there. Now, a lot of times your pin cushion will come with this. We could store our needle up there, but sometimes this falls off. And if it falls off, what I just showed you is how you would store your needle. This area up here has a fiber in it that helps to sharpen the point of your needle or your pins. In class, you'll most likely use a pin cushion like this, or you're more than welcome to go out and get your own and bring it in. Next, we have an empty bobbin. An empty bobbin is what you will get to start out the semester with. These are plastic, and we use them on our drop-in bobbin cases. In class, you'll learn how to wind up your bobbin so it looks more like this. We need our bobbin thread to loop with our needle thread that comes from the spool. So this is what you'll start with. You'll load thread on it and it'll end up looking like this. Next, we're going to look at a spool of thread. When we buy them, they look like this. Okay? There's lots of different brands and styles. I personally love this kind. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by peeling back that sticker on both ends. And I do that so they don't get stuck all over the machines or the floor or the tables. So we're going to, if you end up with a spool of thread that has these stickers, take them off. The next thing that you need to do is you need to find your end. Okay, so if I look around, there should be a little tail somewhere, okay? All I have to do is I have to pull on it, pull, 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 and eventually it comes loose. Right now it's still underneath the top. There we go, it's loose. Okay, so this is my spool of thread, and I use it along with that wound bobbin. Eventually, what your spool will start looking like is this. And that's just because it's been used for a while. But guess what? We can keep using it until it all runs out. When it does run out, you just throw this plastic piece away, unless you have a fun recycle project you want to do with it. Most sewing teachers call this every sewing student's best friend. It's the seam ripper. You will have to use this at some point. It's used to pick out the stitching. So if you mess up on a seam, or sometimes if you have to do a based stitch, which is temporary, you'll pull that cap off and you'll use the end of your seam ripper to rip through or pick through those threads that you want to take out. Another important tool in sewing is your seam gauge. The seam gauge is usually a 6-inch long measurement tool. Its measurement that we follow typically is this side because it is divided in inches. And I'll show you in a future lesson how to read the seam gauge, but these are each 1/8 of an inch measurements. What you have inside of it is a slider to help you, like if you need to do a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you can put that slider right at the 5/8 line and then measure your fabric with that. Next, we're going to look at some marking tools. There's several different varieties. These are both two examples of a fabric marking pen. This one is one that I really like. I get these on Amazon, and they can be marked onto your fabric. They have a really sharp point to them, and it makes it easy for them to transfer to the fabric. These are water erasable. So the lines on this blue pen will stay on your fabric until you wash your project. Another type of marking pen is the double-ended. This one has a water erasable end and an air erasable end. Be careful if you use the purple air erasable end. It will just start disappearing over time within several hours to several days, which is fine for certain projects. But if you're going to be doing a project in class where you need to see that mark for maybe a week or two, then you will want to use the water erasable and not the air erasable side. Another option for marking is wax, or you can even just use basic chalk. This is a piece of wax, and it would be used to mark fabrics either that you could not see a marker on, or this is actually probably the preferred method in the fashion industry. If you are draping fabrics, making muslins, stuff that you guys probably don't need to know about yet, but this is a really great way of making marks and lines on your fabric. Another tool that you honestly will not be using in the intro class, but if you go on to take fashion, you will. This is a tape measure. It's flexible because it needs to wrap around your body in order to take accurate body measurements so that you choose the appropriate size pattern when you are getting ready to construct garments. It is, what we use on is the yellow side that are measured out in 1-inch increments. The last item I'm going to show you here are sewing shears. Sewing shears are used to cut fabrics and threads. Please do not use these sewing shears to cut paper, cardstock, plastic, or any other item that might dull the blade. The orange ones have a little fabric tied around them to remind you that they are fabric shears. If you are left-handed and cut left-handed, these may feel a little awkward. Let me know, and I have some red-handled, left-handed shears that I keep stored in the classroom.